Hello everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Please
Good
confirm if you
evening.
can. All right. Good evening. It's nice having you guys in class once again. Thank you for joining in. I would like to encourage those that are on the call. You can please kindly drop notifications in your subgroups, notifying notifying your other co-mentees that class has already officially started. So not to waste any time. It's already 4 p.m. and we want to have a very swift and fast class if that will be possible. So moving on, my name is Dennis Williams. I'll be your moderator for today. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of cough, so please you kindly bear with me in today's class. Um, so last week we started announcing about Jiipcc mentorship free legal clinic, and we'll just be continuing with that. So Jiipcc has offered to give a free legal. Well, we started a free legal clinic to help creatives, entertainers, athletes, innovators, and startups who are in need of consultation. Right, we are giving the opportunity for you to have a 20 minutes consultation slot with our professionals. Right, and under that, you can also have your contracts reviewed if you have one, and basically you can just register with us. You can ask for the flyers and also help share, to help with the publicity for that. And we'll really appreciate if you can share with your friends, with your colleagues, and just family members, anyone who you feel will be interested in this particular program or in this avenue that we are putting up. Please kindly let them know that this is what we are doing, and we can you can be part of you can always be a part of that. So moving on, we'll just go ahead and be introducing the mentors that we are expecting in today's class. So far we're expecting 6 mentors, if I'm not mistaken, in today's session. Hopefully they all get to join us in the session. So firstly, our first mentor that we'll be expecting in class is Miss Onyekachi Eriobu Aniede, sorry. Ms. Onyekachi has been with us in, I think, one or two of the sessions. And I'm not sure. I'm trying to see if she's already on call. I'm not very certain about that, but I'm sure she'll be joining us as soon as she can. And she will be taking us through today's class. She'll be one of the mentors taking us through today's class, discussing the topic that we have for today. Another mentor that we'll be expecting in today's class, a mentor that we've had in, I think, one or two sessions, is Miss Rita Anweri Chinda. Miss Rita Chinda, like I said, she has been with us in a few classes, and it has been nice and wonderful learning and hearing from her. We hope that she is able to join us shortly, and also we'll be hearing from the depths of her knowledge and insights as regarding the topic for today. Our next mentor that we're expecting in class, so someone who has also been in one or two of our sessions, Mr. Sand Mbakalu. Mr. Sand, like we have earlier mentioned, or like we've earlier read his profile in the previous class, is someone who is deeply involved in the deeply involved in the TKGI and GR in that space. And I'm sure once he's able to join in and we have him, right, he will be sharing with us his deep insights and some of his thought process within this particular space. um Fourthly, we'll be having Mr. Max Ukombe. I think Mr. Max has been here with us from week one up till, and we're also expecting him in this class, though yet to join. But Mr. Max needs no further introduction. You are all familiar with Mr. Max and what he brings to the table in that sense. And I'm sure it's going to be wonderful and nice hearing and learning from him. Um, Also, another wonderful mentor that we're expecting in class today is Miss Amosa Shukurat Modupeola. Miss Amosa Shukurat wonderful mentor. She has been with us in, I think, one or two classes, the first two classes on IP for business and also IP for creatives. We've been able to learn a thing or two from her, and I'm sure she is willing. And okay, she said she would be joining us a little bit late, but we expect to also hear and gain quite a sizable amount of knowledge from her in the light of our class today. Last but not least, another mentor, if I'm not mistaken, last but not least, another mentor that we hope to have in today's class, who has been with us also in several sessions, is Mr. Polarinwa Aluko. Mr. Polarinwa has been a wonderful mentor. He has shared his thought process in under the different space of IP where he has been called upon. And we also expect to have him in today's class, giving lights and sharing insights to the topic for today. And those are our mentors for today. I'm not sure if we have any of them on call yet, but irrespective, I'll just go ahead. We'll just go ahead to just introduce the topic. So the topic for today is TK, GI, and GR's traditional knowledge, geographic indication, and genetic resources. So far, we've been building up from where we started off in week one, where we talked about IP for business, and we introduced that. We talked about the relevant things that that you need to know as it regards the relationship between IP and business. IP is a money-making tool for businesses. When correctly deployed, it's an advantage. It's an advantage to business that know the different intellectual property that ties to their business and know how to make maximal use of it. Secondly, we talked about in week two, we went ahead to discuss about IP for creatives. We talked about how the IP is it's the creation of the mind, so it applies to creatives in all their different ramifications. Those in the entertainment, those in entertainment, those in the innovative space. You know, it all covers that. And I was in class and I partook in the knowledge that was shared, and it was quite interesting hearing from our mentors on that. In week three, we discussed IP registration, infringements, and enforcement, right? And our mentors shed light on the need to have your IP registered for you to police your IP. You know how to follow up with the registration process and the likes. So we had that for week four, and for week three, in week four, we talked about sports business and law. In sports business and law, we highlighted, broadcasting rights, just generally IP within the sporting industry and how that intercepts, especially with special focus on football, and then within also the Nigerian context. And today, we are talking about traditional knowledge, like I said, traditional knowledge, genetic resource, and genetic resource and geographic indications. And I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful discourse. But saying that we do not have any of our mentors yet here on call, right? So I would like to kindly ask that we start with presentations first, right? So please, we would like to start with presentations from both groups. And seeing that the class is being streamed and the mentors have received your presentation beforehand, right? We'll be doing well to I've received your presentation beforehand. They will be doing well to, when they come on board, give their presentation and also give feedback based off of the research that you have made. But for the sake of the class, for us to also have an interactive session where we get to hear from you and those who will be using what you guys have researched as resource based, right? A research based, saying that this class is being hosted on YouTube. We would like to take presentations from the mentees. So starting with group one, if the group one presenter is here with us, please, we'll be taking presentation from you now. Please, can someone confirm that they can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, so please, is the presenter for group one on call? Okay, if we don't have the presenter for group one on call or they are not yet ready, please can we have the presenter for group two? Kindly share your slides and start your presentation if you can. Come on, mentees, do we have people on this class? Do we have the presenters or the backup presenters in this class? Please, we want to receive your presentation and then we can now move on to the mentor. So please, if you are in the session and you know you are supposed to present on behalf of your group, please kindly share your slides and start presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm the presenter for group two. Please, if you could please exercise some patience. I'm trying to share my screen.
All right, thank you, Favor.
Yeah, I'm just gonna share the screen. Okay, it's fine. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. I am Favor Bacha, and I'll be presenting for Group 2. And this week's topic, which centers on geographical indications and traditional cultural expression, traditional knowledge, and genetic resources. Now, for Group 2, we'll be focusing on bioprospecting and genetic resources, traditional ecological knowledge and conservation, as well as globalization and indigenous rights. Now, before I can go further to explain what we're going to be talking about today, I need to focus and give a brief knowledge on what bioprospecting and genetic resources entails. Now, bioprospecting is simply let me put it in layman's terms. It's simply the search and development of new products from natural sources. Now, this include plants, animals, microorganisms, or their genetic materials. Now, these products could come in form of food, cosmetics, that's from the cosmetology industry, industrial products, pharmaceuticals, and so on. Now, what this stems is that indigenous communities have traditional knowledge about certain natural resources. Now, these resources, what bioprospecting aims to do is often to involves the study of this traditional knowledge and exploring the potential of the commercial applications of these resources. Now, what this states simply is that for instance, a company could go to Cross River State, for instance, and then go to find a particular species of mushrooms and begin to research on it. But in order to do a proper research on that, that will probably help to foster or get probably products or pharmaceutical from the pharmaceutical industries and drugs and treatments for certain diseases using this particular product. What they need to do is to go to this particular indigenous community, for instance, Cross River, and study the traditional knowledge and explore so that as to be able to explore potential commercial applications of the resources. In essence, bioprospecting is the exploration of biodiversity, and which aims to discover commercially valuable products or genetic resources. Now, the focus of this, what we're trying to say is discuss the ethical and legal aspects with an emphasis on intellectual property rights, because that's why we're here, and the benefits of these particular sharing agreements. Please give me a second. Okay, so now what this does is, for instance, we have BPAs and IPRs. So Previous slide. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
I can hear you.
The importance of this bioprospecting is simply to amplify the what they call it, the commercial value of these particular products. So in essence, what we're trying to discuss here is what are the benefits of this bioprospecting and genetic resources. Next slide, please. Hello, please, can anyone hear me?
Okay, I can
Yes,
hear
we can
you.
hear you.
Okay, now the key concepts of what we're talking about today includes genetic resources, which are biological materials, like I had mentioned earlier, plants, animals, and the likes. Also, we're going to explore the traditional knowledge, which is a deep understanding of these natural resources from these indigenous communities, like I had explained earlier, from getting mushrooms, for example, from Calabar State in Nigeria. Please, next slide. Now, the process of bioprospecting includes the collection, the analysis, and the commercialization of these particular products or these particular materials that have been sourced. So the collection is simply the assessing genetical materials and related knowledge. Like I said, moving maybe to the particular community, asking the elders and people who have proper knowledge or indigenous knowledge of these properties or materials. Then analysis, which involves the research and testing of these materials. So you can't just go pick up mushrooms, dehydrate them and put them in capsules and begin to sell. Proper research and testing of these materials has to go into it. Then the commercialization, which is the development of the products. For example, like I mentioned earlier, for the pharmaceutical industry, the cosmetology industry, industrial products, food, and the likes. Next slide, please. Now, before we get into this, we have to understand what ethical considerations are. Now, like I said earlier, we can't, these companies cannot just go to these communities and go pick up these products from them and just begin to, research and commercialize them. So there are certain ethical considerations that have to be taken into consideration. Now, number one is consent from these indigenous communities. You must have consent from them in order to, before we begin to collect these products and begin to research on them before commercializing them. Now, this getting consent from these communities ensures fair compensation to these communities. Now, this is done through the access and benefit sharing agreements. Now, this is often negotiated under international agreements like the Nagoya Protocol. Now, what this simply entails is that exploitation of this particular product cannot be done without consent, as consent is key to bioprospecting. Next slide, please. Hello, please, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, now we have to discuss that. Okay, now we have to discuss that. We have to discuss the legal framework. So what does this legal framework entail? It's simply this established sovereign rights over genetic resources, like I have been mentioning earlier, that it is what this does is that it strengthens the CBD by specifying rules on access and benefit sharing for genetic resources while focusing on protecting indigenous knowledge. Now, what the CBD is the Convention on Biological Diversity. Now, there are certain legal tools that are used to regulate both the transfer, the transfer and the use of these genetic resources that have been gotten through consent from these communities. Next slide, please. Okay, now, so our case study is the Hoodia plant, which the San people of South Africa had traditionally used for appetite suppression. Now, what happened here was that the researchers and companies commercialized this knowledge, which led to a lot of benefit sharing agreements and compensation that was granted to the San community for this traditional knowledge. Like I had mentioned earlier, for instance, my example where a company then goes to Cross River State to get this product, that is to get a mushroom, and then they get the consent of the community members, then research begins, then the commercialization of this particular product.
Mommy, my pills has finished though. The pills, that one of 3 kilo. They said it's 28 I'm supposed to use.
Hello?
Sir, you're unmuted. Could you mute yourself?
I forgot. I wanted to even call you.
Please, next slide, please.
Sir, can you unmute yourself, please? Or mute yourself. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so challenges and controversies. Now, so many communities are suffering from this, exploitation, where these companies just come in, without their consent and without making use of the benefits sharing, and they just take this particular thing, like it was seen with the turmeric in India, and then just take this particular product, goes ahead to research on it, commercialize it without balancing the interest which deals with ethical obligations to protect the indigenous rights of these particular communities, and this which has been an issue over and over. So over exploitation of these elite communities. So in conclusion, what we're trying to say here is bioprospecting can create a lot of economic opportunities. Now, but it must be conducted with respect. Now, we can't just begin to, exploit other people and all these communities and then just take the products from them without probably compensating them as it should be done. Now, we need stronger international frameworks and enforcement, which will be necessary to safeguard these indigenous communities' rights to promote sustainable bioprospecting. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Favor, for that presentation. Well done to you. And thank you also to Imalbong for helping us share your slides. Well done to your group for putting together that presentation. So we have one of our mentors on call, Ms. Onyekachi. Thank you so much for joining in. So we had, none of the mentors had earlier joined in, so we decided to start with the mentees presentation. So we just finished with Group 1's presentation, and we'll be taking Group 2's presentations rather, and we'll be taking presentation from Group 1. So after that, Ma will be giving the floor to you for your presentation, and then feedback for your presentation / feedback based off of the presentation. And as other mentors join in, we'll also be taking their presentations and also feedback based off of the research. So please, Group 1, I'm sure you guys are ready now. Please, if you can, please share your slides and start your presentation. Please, you have 10 minutes for your presentation. Let's get done with it so that we can move over to the mentors. Do we have the presenter for group? Do we have the presenters for Group 1? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Adegba, for sharing your screen. So please, who is the presenter?
I'll be the one presenting because our presenters are currently not available. So I'll just rush through the slides.
All right. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so the topic for this week is geographical indication, traditional cultural expression, traditional knowledge, and generic resources. I'm coming. Oh, sorry. I'm coming. Sure. Sorry, please, can you see my screen?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Yes,
We
you
can see
can.
your screen.
All right. So first, we spoke about geographical indications, and geographical indication is regarded as one of the oldest form of trademark. It protects the reputation and quality of a product based on their geographical origin. According to Article 22, sub 1 of the TRIPS agreement, it defines GIs as a sign that are used to identify a good as coming from a specific location, which could be a territory of a member, a region. Basically, geographical indication it shows where a particular product comes from, and it protects that product and the location where it's coming from. So here we have some examples of geographical indications. We have the Gruyere cheese from Switzerland. We have Mexican tequila. We have the Darjeeling tea from India, Basmati rice from India. These ones are the protected ones. Obviously, if we are talking about it like generally, we can talk about the Nigerian or Fada rice, but it's not protected. But the ones I just mentioned now are the protected ones. So moving on, we spoke about the impact of geographical indication on the economy of a country. Basically, what GI does for a country when it protects its product or the place where the product is coming from. I spoke about market value. It increases their market value. It helps the local economy because most of these things are coming from the local markets, like the farms or like just various places, like Adire now from Abeokuta. That's like it's not a village, but like it's not an urban area. It's not, yeah, like that. Then traditions and heritage, it protects their traditions and heritage of the country or of the place where it's coming from. Then the consumers trust. It makes the consumers know that, oh yeah, this is the original, like this is where this thing is coming from. So this has to be the original. Then socioeconomic effects of GIs on communities. It increases income generation. It creates more jobs because people want to produce that product they want to produce more of those products. So they have to employ more people to help them. Then it enhances market opportunities and tourism and local businesses. It also helps, like, people might want to go to like Switzerland now to see where they produce that particular product from. Like in Nigeria, people might want to come to Abeokuta to come and see where they produce Adire or how they produce Adire, just things like that. Then some of the laws that govern GIs, we have Swiss generis laws, but I'll just move straight to the international laws. We have the Paris Convention for the Protection of Industrial Property. We have the Madrid Agreement on the representation of false or deceptive indication, the Lisbon Agreement, Lisbon Agreement, then the World Trade Organization Agreement, that's TRIPS. So I'll be moving on to the traditional knowledge. Traditional knowledge is basically crucial in safeguarding the cultural heritage of an intellectual property of indigenous and local communities. Traditional knowledge encompasses a wide range of practices, skills, and insights accumulated over generations, often relating to agriculture, medicine, craftsmanship, and cultural practices. So, according to the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is WIPO, they assert that while there is no proper definition for TK, it can be said that traditional knowledge is in a general sense, embraces the content of knowledge itself, as well as the traditional cultural expression, including distinctive signs and symbols associated with TK. That's traditional knowledge. So how is traditional knowledge protected? So we have the defensive protection of traditional knowledge, which refers to a set of strategies to ensure that third parties do not gain illegitimate or unfounded IP rights over that particular traditional knowledge. It refers to a set of strategies to ensure that third parties do not gain illegitimate and found knowledge. Then we have the positive protection. It is the granting of and exercising of right to empower communities to promote their traditional knowledge, control its uses, and benefit for its commercial exploitation. So some key aspects of traditional knowledge protections. We have cultural rights as well. It protects the intellectual property, registration system. Like in different countries, they might have different registration system, then informed consent, ensure that any use of traditional knowledge is preceded by informed consent for the knowledge holders. So like make sure that you take permissions from the owners of this knowledge before you can use it. Then laws governing traditional knowledge. We have international treaties like WIPO. WIPO recently adopted the Treaty on Intellectual Property, Generic Resources, and Associated Traditional Knowledge. These treaties require patent application. That's for international treaties. Then in national and regional, we also have several countries with different protocols or different laws that govern traditional knowledge. And also looking back to like a country like Nigeria, you also need like customary law to understand how you're meant to protect it, because this is culture, this is tradition. There are laws that have been for these particular things before we existed, or before the colonial masters came and invented laws, basically. So protecting traditional knowledge involves a combination of legal, cultural, and community-based approaches. Effective protection requires recognizing the rights of knowledge holders, creating supportive legal framework, ensuring fair benefit sharing, and involving communities in decision-making processes. Balancing the need for documentation and accessibility with respect to cultural sensitivities is crucial for preserving and honoring traditional knowledge. So next, I'll be talking about cultural appropriation and traditional cultural expressions. Cultural appropriation is the use of cultural symbols, artifacts, rituals, etc. from a different culture, often without giving adequate compensation to the source community for such usage, and resulting in the preparation of negative stereotypes. According to Article 3, Sub 2 of the Intergovernmental Committee on the Intellectual Property, Generic Resources, Traditional Knowledge, and Folklore, created by WIPO in 2004, it defines traditional cultural expression as various dynamic forms which are created, expressed, or manifested in traditional cultures and are integral to the collective cultural and social identities of indigenous local communities and other beneficiaries. So we're looking at the legal framework for that, and we have copyright laws. Various copyright laws in different countries would help in protecting traditional cultural expressions. And we also have trademark laws that can also help. Some patent laws also help, because I don't think we're able to find specific laws that protect this particular form of intellectual property. Then traditional cultural expression encompasses the ways in which cultural groups express their identity, values, and heritage through practices such as arts, music, dances, and rituals. These expressions are often integral to the cultural identity of the community and can be passed down through generations. Yeah, that's what we have. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Just before you go, please, can you help me with the pronunciation of your name? I think I murdered it this last time.
Adegbe.
You said, sorry, come again.
Adegbe.
All right, thank you, Adegbe, for that presentation. Thank you for stepping in on behalf of your group to help with your group's presentation. Well done to you and to your team members that put together that presentation. We'll be moving on shortly. Well done to Group 1 and Group 2 for stepping in to make your presentation. But then just before we go to Ms. Oyekachi and have our presentation and her feedback from her feedback for what was done by the mentees, we'll just want to take a quick picture. I see that we have quite a number of people on call already. So please, let's just go ahead and take a quick picture and then we'll move over to the mentors. Thank you so much, Queen. All right. Thank you, Nathaniel. Thank you, Mercy. Thank you, Raulat. Thank you, Aditola. And every other person that turned on their videos. Well done. Please, we can all put a smile on our face too. Right. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Ma, also for turning on your video, Miss Jiipcc. We're happy to have you in class. All right. We're done with that. Thank you so much for cooperating. So now over to our mentor, Miss Jiipcc. Please, Ma, we'd just like to get a 20 minutes presentation from you and then feedback of the work that was done by the mentees.
All right, please confirm if I'm audible.
Yes, Ma, we can
Yes,
hear
we can
you.
hear you, ma'am.
All right, so for start, I want to appreciate the two groups that made their presentation. Starting with your slides, I think you did a comprehensive job. It was quite detailed. I think we covered every aspect of what needs to be discussed, every important aspect of today's topic. So kudos to you all for the teamwork.
Thank you,
And then for
ma'am.
the slide, design of the slide, I think there's been a lot of improvement as well. So well done. And then on the presentation, I joined halfway the first presenter's presentation, but overall, because I have a good idea of what's is contained in the slide, so I think you guys did a good work, so keep it up. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. So I'd like to share my slide. I think it's okay to do that.
Yes, Ma, that's fine.
All right, please confirm if you can see my slide. Let's jump into it.
Yes, we can see
Yes,
you.
we can
Yes, yes, slide.
All right, thank you. The slide is show. All right, so welcome every one of you to class. It's always a pleasure sharing knowledge, so I'm happy to be here once more. Thank you for having me. So today's topic, we'll be discussing on traditional knowledge, geographical indication, and genetic resources. I just want to take us back to what we have learned so far, perhaps since the beginning of our sessions on Jiipcc. So the first thing we have learned is that there are some intellectual property rights that are called personal rights. Of course, we already understand the concept of intellectual property. What is intellectual property? That is the property of the mind. That's when you develop something, not like an idea that you just leave it in your brain and you don't do anything about it. You need to develop the idea, work at it, before you can now say you have produced an intellectual property. Can be in form of a song, can be in form of a dance step, can also be in form of a products, services, and what have you. So be that as it may, before now we've been discussing personal rights. What are personal intellectual property rights? As you can see on this slide, it's termed division of intellectual property rights. That is the right in intellectual property itself. I haven't defined what intellectual property is. The rights in it, from what we have learned so far as well, if it's under copyright, maybe right to adapt the work, right of adaptation, right to distribute, right to publish, and what have you. If it is trademark and all that, a trademark owner can decide to assign, just like in copyright as well, you can decide to license your work. So these are what I mean by rights in intellectual property. What you can do with those rights is determined by, are you the owner of the rights? Because what you don't have, you agree with me, you cannot give to someone else. So the foundation of intellectual property itself is that you own it. So it's treated as a normal property, like a real estate, like somebody buys a piece of land and can fence it in and put a lock at it and say, oh, this is my property. Buyers beware, do not come close, do not trespass, because you own it. So when it comes to intellectual property as well, these rights are defined by who owns the rights. So on this slide, we see division of intellectual property rights. So broadly, intellectual property is divided into two. You have the personal rights or personal ownership of rights, and you have the communal ownership of rights. Today's topic, however, tilts us to the communal ownership of rights. So under personal private ownership, that's where you see your copyright is broadly divided into two. I'm sure we've learned that so far, that IP is divided broadly into two, where you see your copyright and related rights, domiciled under the NCC, Nigerian Copyright Commission, and you also have the industrial property. Following the cursor, you find that under intellectual property, there are subdivisions such as patents, trademark, industrial design, sometimes trade secrets, because sometimes people say trade secret is not exactly a form of intellectual property. So that's why I said sometimes. You also have the plant variety and integrated circuit, which is not protected in Nigeria. And you know your trade secret as well does not have a legal framework for protection. Now over to my right, you have the communal ownership of rights. Here you have the GR, traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expression. And this is basically why we're here today. So what happens under the communal ownership? As the name sounds, it simply says it is not owned by one person. It is not owned by an entity. It is not owned by a legal person. It's not owned by an individual or a group of persons. It is owned by a community, a group of people that are bound together by their tradition, by their culture, by their belief system, sometimes also by their religion. So this is what communal ownership is all about. It's about the community. So let's go back. So this is the breakdown. So for industrial property, you can register them under the trademark registry or patent and design registry domiciled under the Federal Ministry of Industry. Your plant variety in Nigeria, you can also register with the National Agricultural Seeds Council, Federal Ministry of Agriculture. Your trade secret, like I mentioned, no legal protection is required, or we don't have a legal protection mechanism. Then copyrights and related rights, you register with the Nigerian Copyright Commission. However, trade secrets, you know, we have modules through which you can protect them, such as your contracts. All the non-competes, the non-solicits, the NDAs, they come to play when it comes to the trade secrets. So let's dive in. So what exactly do we mean by communal rights? These are rights that result from indigenous people's intellectual creativity. I don't know how many of us may have seen movies about historical movies, about a culture, about a tradition, either maybe in Yoruba setting or Igbo setting in our Nollywood movies. You notice that you see a lot of things that binds the people together. It could be folklore, it could be art crafts, it can be the way they weave things. There's just that thing that's a particular community is known by. So this is what communal rights are, communal intellectual property is all about. So it is vested in the community and emanates from their historical and cultural representations, natural or human factors, such as artistic traditions, crafts, sacred activities, ceremonies, folklore, games, and traditional knowledge, including traditional knowledge of community, traditional food. Hence, this economic rights should be defended against selling, leasing, developing, expanding markets, promoting licenses, and pursuing royalties without benefit sharing and crediting the community. So this is just the overall of what today's topic is all about. So when we think about communal rights, because it doesn't belong to an individual, there is every reason why whoever wants to exploit the rights must seek permission of the community. Not just that, you must attribute that product or that raw material to the community. And thirdly, you must be willing to share with the community the proceeds from the sales or from exploiting their rights. Otherwise, you'll be in breach of using the communal rights because it doesn't belong just to one person. So let's dive into definition of terms. We find that there is traditional knowledge or cultural expression, which incorporates the knowledge actual substance and historical cultural representation, including any particular folklore, signs and symbols connected to it. So we find in our generation today that there are some games we find children play, like 10-10, those days we're growing up. I'm sure those of us from the Southwest, you understand what I'm talking about. Then you begin to ask yourself, where did this game emanate from? Can we really trace it to a source? Or you hear stories about the tortoise and maybe, all those animal folklore that we heard our parents tell us when we were growing up. And I begin to ask yourself, where exactly did it emanate from? Can we actually trace it? Do we know its origin? Or the one sung by this brain jotter that's been raining on the internet, that he did some dance steps too. And then you begin to trace it and it said, oh, this song actually belongs to a community in the Southeast, or emanates from the Southeast. And then sung by an artist. Did he really take permission before he sang the song back in those days? And then the brain jotter's use of it, was there also permission? So you begin to see issues arising. So this is what folklore or traditional cultural expression is all about. It's about that song that is identified with the people. It's about that storyline identified with the people. It's about signs and symbols like Bini arts and crafts. Some of these things were taken away during colonial era. And thankfully to people like Chimamanda Adichie, some of these things are being returned. So these are some of the things we're talking about. They are symbols. They are the identity of the people. We move to geographical indication. It's about a product, and it should have the unique characteristics that is associated with a place of origin and be influenced by natural factors such as the environment, the climate, temperature, soil, and human factors. Sometimes people would say indication of source or appellation of origin, as you find in the Paris Convention. However, there's one thing that is significant. When people produce goods and they're actually traceable to a source, the Paris Convention says you seize and prohibit the importation of such a good. So every country that is signatory to the Paris Convention has signed and agreed that when such a good is about to be exported or to be imported, we have a right to prohibit its imports, maybe through seizure and then destruction of such properties. Why? Because the people must be credited. We must not pass a good that emanates from a particular locality and credit it to another community. This will be robbing them of their rights. We move to genetic resources. What about genetic resources? These are like microbiology, microorganisms, plant variety, animal breeds, genetic sequences, nucleotide, amino acid sequence, and what have you. Recall what happened in Wuhan, in China. Some say it's a mutation of organism that turned into coronavirus that became so dangerous and killed a lot of people. So genetic resource is also about microorganisms that can also be used to produce things like maybe biscuits and other food products in the markets. So they're actually very important. Some of them are found amongst communities and they differ. So the ones you find in Africa cannot be the same as the ones you find in other regions of the world. So let's try and classify. I have Ijebu Gari, Adire Thai and Dai. I have Nsuka Yellow Pepper, and I also have Benin Bros. I don't know if any of the group members can unmute and speak to this slide. Can you tell me the one that represents geographical indication on the slide from what we have discussed so far? And from your presentation, because you people have been detailed, which is why I tried not to go back to what was already on your slides. Yes, please.
Well, I think Ijebu Gari can be classified as geographical indications.
Okay, what might be your reason?
Sorry?
So what's the reason for that classification? Why do you think it's a GI? Okay, remember we defined GI and we said some things about GI. Yes.
Yeah, I think the geographical indication because it relates to the name of a particular place. It's peculiar to a place. Yes.
Okay, not just about that. I schooled in Ijebu, and I recall very much seeing in front of my hostel all these aged women, kind of roasting gari over stones and fire underneath, just like you see in that picture, and they keep turning and turning and turning. One amazing thing about Ijebu gari is its taste. When you put the original Ijebu gari in your mouth, it kind of gives you that sour taste. And you need to be careful the reaction you expect. And it's good for drinking, not for making eba, and many other qualities like that. So you can't find cassava from, say, the southeast give you the taste Ijebu gari would give you. So one particular thing about GI is that the soil pertains to its quality, the atmosphere, the ecology of the place, all of it contributes to the taste of that particular thing. In Enugu, there's this goat they refer to as Enugu goat, and then the way it smells, especially when it's being cooked, makes you sometimes from a very far distance, you can perceive the aroma of this goat. Just like your Suka yellow pepper as well, is also a form of GI. The taste, it is said when you're cooking with Suka yellow pepper, be wary if you have your mother-in-law around, because she might be thinking you have this particular goat I was referring to now in your pot of soup. And then when you dish the food and there's no meat inside or there's no goat, she might think that you kept that away from her, and that could cause some trouble. That's one of the secrets of Nsuka yellow pepper. So it gives the aroma of a real goat, and it can be so delicious. So the next one is adire, tie, and dye. Can somebody speak to that from the other group? Yes, please.
Yes, good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
So my contemplation was that the tie and dye would constitute as traditional knowledge or cultural expression, because we've already previously discussed that traditional knowledge would present itself as signs, symbols, arts, and crafts. So clearly tie and dye as represented on clothing or cloth would constitute as those arts and crafts by a particular culture.
Absolutely. Just like you have the Swiss wristwatch, it is said it's not just about agricultural products. Some will say that is a GI. Maybe it will also form under traditional cultural expression, but adire, tie, and dye is particularly traditional cultural expression for us in Nigeria. Because when I view the Swiss wristwatch, I'm wondering why do they say it's GI? Is it because the word Swiss is, is a part of its name? Yes, it emanates from a particular people, from a community, but do we necessarily have to say it's a GI? It's something coming from the soil. But because in the definition of GI, we say the people's skill, there could be a form of skill that is domiciled in a particular community, which is why I think it is called Swiss wristwatch. But beyond that, it could be a form of cultural expression, like this is what we do, this is something we know how to do. So this is what we have in Nigeria. An example of it is adire, tie, and dye. If you take this skill to another place and move this particular set of villagers to that place, maybe in the north, would they be able to produce the same results? The answer is yes, because the skill lies with the people. It's not coming from the soil. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Hence why I am like, why do we call it Swiss wristwatch? Because if we move these people to another region, this set of people, and give them the same materials they would need, they will still be able to make those wristwatches. I hope you agree with me. However, that is a debate for intellectuals, on a different level. So looking at this adire, tie, and dye now, this community, they know how to make it. But in recent time, we've heard stories or have seen adire, tie, and dye that is not from Nigeria, made in China. I don't know if anyone has seen that, or if a Isiago that is domiciled amongst the Igbos, that is all these what's it called now, like Akwoche, all these Isiago, like lion heads worn by Igbos, yeah? I hope you can relate to what I'm saying. Some of these materials, they are now printed in the form of Ankara texture, coming all the way from China. So these are the issues for discussion today. Do we see any form of misappropriation there from your slide presentation? I know you talked about that. Did you see cultural appropriation without crediting a people, without taking our permission? Did we sign any contract MOU with China to produce our direct tie and dye or to produce our Siago? That's a question we should start deliberating on. And then like the Benin Bronze, we already referred to Chimamanda Adichie and so many other persons that were instrumental in returning some of the arts and crafts stolen away from Nigeria during the colonial era. So this basically talks about, or is a sample of all the aspects of communal intellectual property rights that we're here to discuss. So seeing all the skills or the strengths or the energy people are putting into work, either to grow this suka yellow pepper, or even to prepare this Jiipcc gari, or to make this adire tie and dye, or even to mold this. I don't know how it's done, but I can imagine somebody sits down, a community sits down, puts maybe 100 days of work into making just one Benin bronze, and then somebody carries it away. How would you feel? Is it nice not to say, oh, this is coming all the way from Nigeria? Is it nice not to say, oh, this is done by a particular community, like to attribute the work back to the community? Is it okay to just steal it and go reap money out of it without looking back to say thank you to that community, to say this is the proceed from the money, from the sales of your products or the raw material coming from your region? These are issues for discussion. Now, steps to have an effective GI system. I want to use a case scenario of Jiipcc gari. From the picture we have seen, before one can say we want to have an effective GI system, because in Nigeria, you understand that sometimes they'll say, okay, collective, what's it called now? Standardization can be one of the ways we can protect it. However, we have been advocating for a sui generis law, whereby we have a law that we can say this is our own GI law in Nigeria. So these are the steps for an effective GI system. The first is to be able to identify products characteristics. First, to identify the products. You agree that we have so many communities in Nigeria from the east, the north, the south, and the west. Each of these communities, because we are so diverse in nature, and then the topography is quite different. The ecological factor of each community is quite different. You agree with me, we'll find a lot of GIs, and what have you in these communities. So there is a first step of collecting and collating data by identifying these products first. So assuming you come from village A, can you identify the products you have? While somebody from village B is able to say, okay, these are the ones we have. Then number two, can we identify the product's characteristics, considering that another neighboring community like yours has a similar product. However, the taste, the texture, the color, the weight, and what have you are just different from what is coming from your community, to the extent that you can say this is a geographical indication. And then it's also important to assess its market potential internally and externally. Looking at Jiipcc gari, I'm sure we must have seen on television adverts about Jiipcc gari. Some who had granules, honey, milk, and what have you in a package to sell. So you don't need to add any other thing to it. And then we see some people package and send abroad. So does it have market viability? The answer is yes, both internally and externally. Hardly will you find a Nigerian student that doesn't have gari in his luggage for school. So it's important to strengthen the cohesion of group of producers. So like, do we have in this community association of Jiipcc gari producers? Can they form a community? Can they say, okay, we are now a group, and then be registered as a collective group to say, okay, we have a trademark and this is our collective mark. So any other person producing Jiipcc gari who is not from our community, who is not sourcing the gari from our community, cannot be allowed to use our seal, because we have collective mark and it's a mark of ownership over these products gari. So these are some of the things to be done. What is the product quality, the packaging, the processing, and what have you? Because they are now a community, they have a common interest. So they come together to put a guideline to say, This is how we are going to process our Ijebu Gari so that it can meet international standard, whether we want to export or we want to consume locally in Nigerian markets. So any other person who wants to produce what is called Ijebu Gari, apart from being our member, must agree to follow maybe these 3-5 steps of production of Ijebu Gari, such as maybe you soak the cassava for 10 days, you expose to the sun, you run it on a machine, all those kind of things. They put like guideline, which everyone must agree to adhere to, being a member of this collective group. So reproduction of local resources. Now, when we want to replant this our cassava, how do we replant it? Do we wait for a particular season of the year? All these measures so that at the end of the day, we produce good quality that is viable locally and internationally. Environmental sustainability. We need to be conscious of the fact that the ground may be tired, so there are measures we put in place such that maybe when we harvest from this particular area, we move to another area so that the soil does not lose its potency. Because don't forget, the soil is one of the reasons why Ijebu Gari tastes the way it tastes. So because they have a common interest, they begin to consider about the sustainability and what have you. Then we talk about product remuneration. So the money from this cassava that we exploited from our various communities, how do we give back? You begin to see them talk about, okay, we are going to build a school in our various communities. We are going to build hospitals. We are going to empower women and, skills like that. So many things. It's a way for the community to say we are benefiting. So it's not necessarily about you give them money and then they go from door to door to start sharing 1,000 or 1 million naira. You do something that is collective, something that people can benefit from. And then public policy. Government is needed in this. It's not something the community can just run off by themselves. No matter what a community does, it's government that decides what happens in the global market, in the national market. It's government through policy that can direct how these communities are also going to benefit, that can protect their interests. To then say that, okay, nobody can exploit these rights without ensuring that such person is also giving back to the community. So through public policy, we begin to see maybe Ministry of Agriculture put a lot of interest in Ijebu Gari production. Why? Because it's generating money, both internationally and locally. We move on to the next slide. So why are we protecting communal rights? It reduces misappropriation. When something is not protected, when we started, I made reference to somebody buys a plot of land and fences it in and puts a lock to say, do not trespass. So because it's a communal property, everybody lives in the community, including you and I that have moved to the city. Sometimes, occasionally Christmas or during occasions, we travel back to our community. So we have access. So we can just go to a piece of land and pack all the yellow peppers there and then take them home, maybe because the farmland belongs to your grandfather. So you have access. So it reduces misappropriation if the right is protected. Hence, the local farmers, because they know that Nsuka yellow pepper or even the cassava we've been using as example is now protected. So they have a way to say this is the portion that goes to the local people or to our various families for consumption within the community. These other parts, when we harvest it, we surrender it maybe to the chief to say, from here, then we export or exploit collectively or get a third party to exploit on our behalf. That way, you can't randomly go to the piece of land to pack as much as needed for an export. So there's going to be some level of control. Access and benefit sharing. This is really important. Anybody that is granted access agrees to also what? Share the benefits, like a third party that is brought into the picture. Maybe the person is not even from Ijebu and then is interested in exporting Ijebu Gari because maybe he has access or he lives in Europe, he has access to the markets. So if he can export it, this person can't just come carry them without agreeing to share the benefits with the people. So whatever is gotten is also what's given back to the people. You can sign an agreement with these people such that say 50-50, or even the community gets a whole much more. It is said that the cocoa that we plant in Africa is the raw material used for making chocolate abroad. Now we find in these various communities where cocoa is sourced, young children exploited and working on the farmlands. At the end of the day, they don't even have a taste or have an idea of what the real chocolate tastes like. Yet it's coming from their community. Is that not a form of exploitation? Yes, it is. Protection, evidence of ownership. Once there is protection, everybody knows Ijebu Gari is protected. We all know it belongs to people of what? Say Ijebu Ode. So you can't say you're from the southeast and you're laying claims over it, or if you are from the north. So it belongs to those people, or even any other part of Yoruba land, because yours wouldn't taste or be presented like Ijebu Gari, because the texture is even kind of a stony, so it's not like the other Gari that can be smooth. Now, what are the consequences of protection? The community reaps its benefit. Usually, how? There's always maybe an age grade or the chief of the community who is a custodian of this rights. And then through this person, every other person can get to enjoy the benefits that accrues to the people collectively as a community. Partnerships could be formed between the government and the community, whereby government can say, okay, I'm also taking maybe 5% for protecting this, your rights. And then the community, you get, say, maybe 45% of the 50% paid to you by the third party who is exploited. The rights may be contracted to a third party to work for the benefit of the community. Then there is that right of attribution, because it is protected. The person who is exploiting is compelled, say for instance, the cocoa that is taken to Europe and then turned into chocolate. You are compelled to state the raw material, which is cocoa, is coming from a community in Nigeria. But when you look at your chocolates, hardly would you see anything like that. There is no attribution. Nobody is saying it's coming. Nobody is mentioning the source. And that is an important aspect of GI or communal rights, indication of source. You must indicate the source where the product is coming from in order not to be seen as misappropriating other people's rights. Also, when it is protected, the breach of the right will be actionable. If there is no law, there can't be an offense. You understand? That's what Yoruba people will say. So when there is no law, there can't be an offense. And law cannot be retrospective. So in a situation where there is no law protecting our GI, and somebody just walks into your community all the way from Europe, and you know the way we perceive Oyibo people in our villages, all those our mothers will come out and start dancing, celebrating them, happy to have a white man in the community. The white man settles for a period of 3 months, identifies the secrets of the community or their traditions or their traditional knowledge, and he exploits it without taking permission. And we even freely give to the Oyibo man to say, see, this is bitter leaf, it's good for the body. Unknown to you that the Oyibo man knows that he can convert the components or the elements of the bitter leaf and make slim tablets and bring them back to Nigeria to sell to people who are actually on the fat side without attributing the source back to the community where those leaves were gotten from. So these are some of the challenges we'll find in the system. Protection available in Nigeria. Yeah, thanks to WIPO. Recently, I think around March of this year, we have the Treaty on Intellectual Property, Genetic Resources, and Traditional Knowledge. However, it's yet to be domesticated in Nigeria. Why? Because by virtue of Section 12 of the Constitution, the Senate must be able to make an act of National Assembly to then say, this treaty is now applicable to us in Nigeria. And then it's a federal law. And then it goes across again. States will now start adopting by having their laws as well to say, okay, this is applicable in Lagos states, and then it is enforceable. So we are yet to have that in Nigeria. But beyond this, we have certification mark, which is what is being used to protect our GIs at the moment, domiciled under the trademark registry. What are certification marks? I give an example of, say, NAFDAC logo. You see that's a seal from SON or NAFDAC saying this good is certified. So you find things like that on such products to say, okay, it is certified. So a certification mark does not certify that a good is from a particular origin. No, it doesn't. Rather, it is used to certify quality. Remember when we were discussing some steps we must take in order to protect GI? We talked about certification of quality, ensuring that the quality is the same by having, say, a standard of steps of production to say maybe up to 3-5 steps. These are what to be done with the cassava. You soak for 10 days, you spread in the sun. So you follow the same step so that at the end of the day, the end product tastes exactly the same, even though it's coming from different farmers or different producers. So at the end of the day, it tastes exactly the same. So we have that seal on it to say it is certified as a gari coming from how do I put it now? Say a community or collection of Jebu gari producers. Yes. So you also have under the Copyright Act, I think section, is it 63 or 73 now, talking about the folklore. You can't use a folklore without the permission of the NCC. So before you can exploit, say, story domiciled in a community, you need the permission of NCC, otherwise you'll be in breach of that. So this is one of the new ways. So this now is domesticated in Nigeria through the Copyright Act. So this is an example of what I meant by a treaty must be domesticated, so by an act of the National Assembly. So we have genetic resources like plants, like plant variety, which is protected by Plant Variety Protection Act of 2021, and it's domiciled under the National Agricultural Seed Council. So criteria for plant variety, it says it has to be novel. So I always say that plant variety for me is like the opposite of GI. It is said that agriculture GI, knowing fully well that our product GI is like Swiss wristwatch, yeah? Or if you want to say, I don't want to think that red tie and dye is classified under that. So it's better left as cultural expression, traditional cultural expression or traditional knowledge of a people, because it's a form of skill. However, when we look at plant variety, it's the plant itself. Once you move it from, say, from the north and move that plant to the east, and there's a change in the topography or the soil, the atmosphere, that plant produces the same thing. It is uniform. The end product is uniform. It tastes the same. It maintains the same size, the same quality. Everything is the same. But in the case of GI, when you transplant a GI, say Nsukka yellow pepper, if you move it from Nsukka and take it to another parts in the eastern Nigeria, at best you might have the same color, but not exactly the same aroma or taste of Nsukka yellow pepper. And then when you look at, so it says it has to be novel. Novelty of plant variety means that for a period of at least 1 year in Nigeria, it hasn't been used, it hasn't been heard of, or 4 years in other territories, or 6 years if it's like a tree, it hasn't been used. So nobody has seen it in the markets whatsoever. Nobody has seen it any other place. So which means you just keep it maybe in your backyard and you continue to grow it. It is distinct. It has to be distinct. A variety is deemed to be distinct if it's clearly distinguishable from any other variety whose existence is a matter of common knowledge at the time. So like I said, it is novel. Nobody has heard of it. Nobody has seen it. So if you have your farm in your backyard, it's a secret place for you, like a secret haven where you plant your, it may be a combination of 2 plants. It is said there's this community or this plant variety that is a mixture of tomato and pepper, which means when you want to make stew, you don't need to buy pepper separate. You just need to buy this particular product and then blend it to have a taste of both your tomato and pepper inside one product, instead of buying tomato and pepper. So this is an example of plant variety. It's a joining of maybe different kinds of plants or different kinds of seedlings, and then maybe there's some sort of mutation. I'm not a scientist per se, and then you have that new product, and then it's uniform. It doesn't the results is not different. Wherever you go to, the character remains the same. So for plant variety, the duration is 20 years, except if it's a tree or a vine, then it gets 25 years. So this is where I'll be stopping my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sorry for the delay in response. Thank you so much, Ms. Onyekachi, for that wonderful presentation from your end. It was really nice listening to you help us break down those concepts individually, and also giving us practical examples and case situations where they apply. So far, we do not have any mentor yet who has been able to join. Right, some have taken admittance to the fact that they will not be able to join in for the session. But in the light of the fact that our mentor, Ms. Onyekachi, has done quite, will I say, in the last 30 minutes thereabout, has done due justice to the topic, and she has highlighted very, very important points, we'll just go ahead with the question and answer section. Imal Bong, do you have a question before I place the question that was asked by the group?
Yes, just like a quick one. If we could get the a copy of the presentation by Miss Onyekachi.
All right, Smart. So please, the mentees are requesting if it's going to be possible from your end to get your presentation.
That's fine. I'll send it across.
Right.
All right,
Thank you, Ma.
Thank you. So Adetola Rukeya, if I'm not mistaken, please, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thanks, sir. Ms. Onyekachi, at the beginning of your presentation, you said our plant varieties were not protected. That's what I wanted to confirm, because I think I read something about the Plant Variety Protection Act, which protects plant varieties. So did you mean that it's not protected under intellectual property, or that it's not protected at all?
All right, maybe I'm not sure that was what I said. I said trade secrets. Sometimes people say it's not a form of intellectual property, not plant variety. And you'll also notice the emphasis on plant variety towards the end of my slide. At the beginning here, plant variety is registered with the National Agricultural Seed Council. You see that?
Yes,
Also,
yes, I
towards
do.
the end, there is also further emphasis. So it wasn't plant variety. That statement is limited to trade secret. No legal protection is not that is not required, but we don't have a legal framework for protecting it. So we use NDA. Those are non-disclosure agreements. We use some nuances in contracts, such as a non-compete, non-solicit, whereby you say NDA is practically about you don't disclose what it contains. And then somebody who is employed maybe under a company where they use trade secrets in their contracts, employment contracts, there must be a nuance saying that non-compete, non-solicit. So you don't compete if, for instance, you are sacked or you leave the employment for the next 3-5 years, you can't work with, say, my competitor. Say like you have Coca-Cola and Pepsi. You can't leave Coca-Cola to go work with Pepsi. And even if you do, you're still bound not to disclose what you found out while working for me on the Coca-Cola company. Do you understand? So those are how we use contracts to protect trade secret. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Thank you very much, Ma, for answering that question. And thank you to Adetola for also asking the question. So please, do we have more live questions before we go to the questions on the chat box?
Yes, sir. So I have a question for our mentor.
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Israel.
Yes, Ma, is it possible that a community can use trademark to protect their goods?
Yes, we talked about collective marks, and then we talked about, I think it was in the last slide, let me go to it, certification mark. So collective mark is when a group of people come together to say, okay, this is our collective mark. Say I made reference to, say, producers of Jiipcc Gari. They can register on that trademark. At the same time, we have certification mark, which is now certifying quality, such as the Standard Organization of Nigeria, their logo, or that of NAFDAC. So when people buy drugs or when they buy food products, and then they see NAFDAC, they know that NAFDAC has certified the quality to be okay. So they are happy to take it without fears.
All right. Thank you very much, Ma, for helping us
Thank
with
you,
that
Ma.
question. Thank you very much, Ma, for helping us with that question, and also thank you to Israel. So moving on, so we have a few questions on the chat box that was sent in over the course of the research by the mentees. So Ma, please, we just want to give you the floor to help us answer these particular questions. I'm not very sure if you've addressed them over the course of your presentation, but we would still like you to just take a look at them and see if you can give kind answers to them. So the first question here is, what role does intellectual property law play in ensuring fair benefits sharing for genetic resources?
All right, so intellectual property, like we've seen, for genetic resources, that falls under communal intellectual property rights, because genetic resources can be microorganisms found in the soil of a community. It can be, things found on plants or whatever, the roots of plants. I'm not a scientist like I'd mentioned before. So it's a collection of such things that are not sometimes visible to the eye. That's why it's called genetic resources. They could be tiny microorganisms. However, they help in producing other products, such as maybe biscuits or even in the cosmetic industry. So they're actually very important. So how does intellectual property help? Because it's a communal right, I turn to this slide because I think it speaks to it. If we don't protect it, people can just come into the community and exploit it without even asking us. We would gladly even give it out. I've made reference to a white man settling in a local community. They always act like they have more sense than we do, with all due respect. And then our people are kind of naive, not understanding that the white man has a mission. Just like during the colonial era, they exploited so many of our natural resources. So that's always often the target. So they come with a mission. And so this person settles, has access to everything in the community, including the thing beneath the soil. So most genetic resources are found beneath the soil or sometimes in the body of animals. So people can exploit them without permission, except we already have some level of protection, such as the steps already listed for us and how we can actually have a good protection system. That is when people can consider taking permission to exploit, and then we can in turn get benefits because we are protected. So yes, intellectual property helps us ensure that there is fair benefit sharing, because if we have a model for sharing, then say 20%, 30% to the community, maybe 50% to government. That is how you have it in some communities. So government is a part of it. In some other community, government takes the least. So it depends on the sharing ratio agreed to by the parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. The next question here is, can you give examples of how indigenous communities use TEK for sustainable resource management?
Yes, traditional knowledge. During my slide, I think I forgot to give an example of traditional knowledge that is well known in Nigeria, or I wouldn't say well known, but I've heard of it several places. So let me start from there. So you see, traditional knowledge, this is a knowledge that is indigenous to a people, like a skill, like you have that traditional cultural expression. But traditional knowledge is more of, in terms of medicine, in terms of healing, in terms of therapy. Like, the Indians, they have their therapy that helps to massage the body. And the Chinese people, they also have all manner of therapy, acupuncture, and what. Nigerians, don't you think we also have our own form of therapy, healing therapy? Before the white man came, how was it that our grandparents survived? There were herbs, there were concoctions that he made. Those were born out of traditional knowledge. So there are sometimes this knowledge is domiciled and passed down from one family to their next generation. So it's not always like community right that is spread across the community. It's usually domiciled, say, in a particular family within the community. So perhaps in your various communities, you may have heard your parents say, when somebody has an accident, the leg is broken, go to so compound. The father may have passed the the powers. So sometimes the children are born with a gift. So it's more of a gift than something that is picked up generally in the community. So, and it is highly protected by people of those, by such families. They make sure they don't disclose what it takes for their healing, for the recipes that they produce, or for the medicines that they produce. So back to my example, there's this case of told by my driver, which I later also heard from other sources on different occasions. So referring to the same skill that we have in Nigeria, because when we discuss GI or communal intellectual property rights, I love to see in the slides Nigerian examples. And today I did see a few of them, but it can be much more. So this is why it's important to talk about this. So it was said they were playing football and one of the persons his leg was broken, physically like broken the bones. And so they rushed him to a traditional medicine healer. And then he told them to go and buy a fowl. You know what that is, like chicken. And so he located the same position of this of his patient's leg in the fowl or in the chicken and broke that point. And the point was, he did some, of course, incantations, what. The point was going to break the chicken's leg. The patient was in severe pains. He was screaming as though it was his leg that was being broken. And then it was said, the moment the leg of the chicken was being broken, his was being straightened. So you see, it looks like it's a magic. It looks like it's not possible, but it is, and we have it in Nigeria. So this is one of our traditional knowledge that we have. However, we find that sometimes this knowledge or even our herbs, they're being misappropriated, and that is why this new treaty that came out now on GI, traditional knowledge and all that, is saying if somebody should develop a patent, patent is an invention, you must disclose perhaps that you have used something that is a traditional knowledge or traditional or genetic resources, whatever. You must disclose the source before you can file for a patent. So it's prerequisite for the grant of a patent if it's a patent that has used any communal rights. So now back to your question, can you give examples of how indigenous communities use traditional knowledge for sustainable resource management? So I've given you an example of a traditional knowledge. If we decide to keep it sacred, can't we sustain our resource management? It is said that in the Ministry of Health now they have a department for traditional knowledge. And I've been doing my research and wondering when it's a time when we can say, let's get these herbalists or traditional knowledge practitioners, bring in the potency in their medicine, and then we'll mix it up with whatever the white man is doing with the orthodox medicine, so that we have our own brand of genetic, what's it called now? Like drugs, you can make, I wouldn't use the word mutation, you can make, like when a real brand of medicine, I'm trying to remember the word, like a real brand of medicine, say paracetamol, you can make another brand of it at the expiration of that paracetamol, which is 20 years. If it's a patent, it's 20 years, so that other people can also develop it. So there's this grammar or English we use.
Do you mean an improvement patent or something like that?
Not improvement. Thank you for your contribution. No, it starts with a G, but it's not a genetic, like a Gion, like it's cheaper. And so we can actually use our cultural, our medicine, our tradition, our herbs, and use them as raw materials to imitate whatever was used to making a particular drug, so that it is readily available in our community. And then we have a participation of these traditional herbalists or traditional medicine healers. So we combine it with whatever raw material we can find, and be able to make our own local drugs, which is what Indians are doing. So most drugs are coming from India through this package, and it's supported by the troops. So just I can't put but before the end, I'll just put it on the chat. So I'm sure to remember the grammar. So it helps us to sustain the economy, of course. It helps us to sustain resource management when we put some of our traditional knowledge to use. It helps to sustain both the economy, it helps to sustain resource management. Resource management, I want to think resources we have in the country, it has to the economy and what have you. So I hope that answers the question.
All right, thank you very much, Ma, for helping us with that one. I think we still have 2 more questions here. The third question is, what are the major challenges indigenous communities face in protecting their cultural heritage in a globalized world?
All right, so we already talked about the challenges. When we look at the slide again, let me just go back to it. I think there's a mention of trying to open, what did I press now? I think I'd mentioned in my slide some of the challenges. First, people need to also know and be able to identify the products. Like Nigeria now, our community, we are so diverse, we are so many. And there is no kind of boundary whatsoever to say this is community A, B, apart from maybe demarcations by farmlands or leaves or trees and what have you, to say, okay, this is where this community stops and what. So first, there needs to be data collection, which is very tedious, can be expensive, need to involve government because it's going to be all around the various communities. Just like in China, they have maybe GIs, genetic resources, running into millions and millions in number. Nigeria too, because of we are diverse and we have various topography in our various regions. So we also have a lot in our soil, beneath the soil, above the soil, that we can call communal rights. So it takes a lot to actually collate, identify them, collate them, have a database for it, and then be signatory to not just to this new law, this new treaty, domesticate it. Because even if you're a signatory without domestication, you can't enforce the rights or you can't enjoy the rights, you can't implement those rights within the country. So these are some of the challenges. It can be expensive. It's not something just a community can set to do. The lack of awareness, lack of education. People don't know that IP is the in thing. So communities don't even know there's a lot of money which they can benefit. And not just that, there are some communities that have a sacred traditional knowledge, or they tell you something that is a taboo to expose, that you can't share the knowledge. So all these myths and beliefs can also be an hindrance, whereby the chief is saying, if you disclose, you die in 3 days, blah, 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 those kind of things. So people are quiet about it because it is seen as a sacred thing, or it's a taboo to want to disclose it to other people. I know when you want to exploit, there has to be some level of disclosure. So these are majorly the challenges. And then quality, standard, I mentioned those in my slide. You need to have a standard for production of those things. You need to be able to attest to the quality to say, okay, this is the quality, the global, international level. So wherever it goes to, people can assure or be assured of the quality coming to them. So all these things are challenges, apart from illiteracy and then lack of knowledge and belief in the intellectual property system and its benefits. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ma.
Thank you very much, Ma. I think the last question here has been I think you've addressed that question earlier, and I think the class itself has been able to address that. So please, do we still have anyone with a live question, so that we can wrap up with the session if there's none?
Yes, I would like to ask a question, sir.
All right, please go ahead, Mr. Ridwan.
Yes, my question to our mentor today, thank you for the presentation, is what will happen in a situation where a particular product is attributable to 2 or 3 communities? So what will be the solution? So
sorry, can you take that again? I'm not sure I heard you.
Okay. I said in a situation whereby a product is attributable to 2 or more communities. So what will be the solution in knowing the community that has the protection for that particular product.
All right, that's a good one. It was not covered in my presentation, and it's true. Not just a local community, it can even be between two countries. Like you have the basmati rice, it's said to be between Indians and Pakistans. The boundary, that's where it is grown. So I'm not aware they have any, because they're not even friends in the first place, you know. So I'm not even sure they have any, say, MOU on how to share. So it looks more like Indians are doing their own separate and Pakistans are doing their own what? Separate. So in the same manner, you can also have those two communities exploit differently. So one cannot hinder the other one from exploiting. Like you find Nigeria grows cassava of different sorts. So do our neighbors like Ghanaians. They also have variety of cassava. We have bitter leaf, they have bitter leaf. So we may not be able to lay claims to some of the bitter leaf that are being used for some patents, because they too also want to lay claims, since the Igbo is not even interested in disclosing where he gets his bitter leaf. So those are some of the issues. So I think each person, depending on the system they have working in their country, because it begins by the community protecting it. If you don't protect it, if your country does not recognize and protect it, another country is not compelled under these treaties to also want to recognize and protect for you. So that's one of the rules to communal intellectual property rights. So it begins from home. Charity, they say, begins at home. So our Nigeria community must recognize that we have some herbs that can be a part of GI, GR, and what have you, that we have a lot of things growing beneath our soil that we can exploit as communal rights. But since we have not done that, Oiboma will not do it for us. So we have to first identify them, collate them, before we talk about exploiting and then benefit sharing and what have you. So basically, that's what it is. So when such exists between two communities, either they exploit differently or they can partner to exploit. But I'm not sure I've heard of the situation of partnership. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ma.
Thank
you to Mr. Ridwan for asking the question, and thank you to Ms. Orikachi for answering that question. So I think in the light of all the questions that we've taken, and also in the light of the presentation from class and also the presentation from the mentees, I want to say thank you for making yourself available for the session to the mentees, and to the mentor, Ms. Orikachi. Thank you so much for sparing your time to being here with us in class, to share your knowledge, your slides, and also help us answer questions and bridge the knowledge gap that we have as in regards to this particular topic. Thank you so much, Ma. We really and sincerely do appreciate. On behalf of the other mentors in Absential, I want to sincerely apologize to the mentees. Okay, that will be communicated. The dates for the exams will be communicated to the group, and it's going to most likely be in week 7. Right, so in light of, like I was saying, concerning the mentors that were not able to join in for session, we apologize to the mentees. Hopefully, I'm sure it was because of reasons beyond their control that they were unable to join in for the session. We sincerely do apologize on their behalf. And I will just be saying, okay, yes, just to remind the class, do not forget to share what you have learned on social media platform. Tag Ms. Orikachi, tag Ms. Orikachi, tag Jiipcc, and just let the world know that you have learned so much from this particular class and how you are going to be employing this knowledge in improving yourself, improving Africa as a whole, because this knowledge will go wasted if it is not being shared, if it is not being received by the right kind of people. Like, that means we just don't keep the knowledge within our own space. We hand it over to people who are involved in this space, particularly those in the villages and the likes. So do not forget, you can also access this class. It's being streamed on YouTube, so you can always revisit the class anytime you want to follow up with some of the informations that have been passed on here. Thank you so much once again, everyone, for being in class. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and goodbye.
Goodbye.